Marcus Cole grabbed Tyler Brance by the throat, slammed him against the barracks wall, and didn't say a single word. Not one breath, not one flinch. Just ice-cold eyes that had seen things Tyler couldn't dream of in his worst nightmares. The entire boot camp went dead silent. And then Colonel Harrow walked in, took one look at the tattoo on Marcus's back, and went completely white. What happened next shook every man in that camp to their core. Drop the name of your city in the comments right now. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you're new here, hit subscribe. You are not going to want to miss where this goes. The morning Marcus Cole pulled into Fort Dawson, the sky was the color of a bruise. Not the romantic kind writers put in books. The real kind, gray-purple and swollen, sitting low over the Virginia hills like it was waiting for something to go wrong. He had been driving since 4 in the morning, 11 hours from Memphis, with a thermos of black coffee, a paper bag of gas station peanut butter crackers, and the low hum of a minivan engine that sounded like it was negotiating terms with God just to keep running. In the back seat, there was a booster seat with a broken clip and a crayon drawing of 2 stick figures, one tall, one small, both holding hands under a bright yellow sun. The small one had written across the top in shaky 7-year-old letters, "Daddy, come home safe." Marcus had folded that drawing 3 times and tucked it into the breast pocket of his flannel shirt before he left Memphis. He touched it now, through the fabric, as he turned off the engine. He sat there for a moment, just sat there, looking at the entrance gate of Fort Dawson, at the 2 young MPs standing stiff and serious in their pressed uniforms, at the rows of recruits already moving in the distance through the morning haze. Then he exhaled, slow, long, controlled, the kind of breath a man takes when he's made peace with something. He grabbed his duffel bag from the passenger seat, climbed out of the minivan, and walked toward the gate. He heard them before he even got through check-in. Not yelling, not anything dramatic. Just that particular sound, low, mean laughter, passed around a group of young men like a cigarette they all wanted a drag of. There were maybe 12 of them standing near the intake area, a loose cluster of 20-somethings in new boots and fresh haircuts, all lean muscle and confidence, and the kind of energy that only exists when you haven't yet been taught humility. One of them, tall, square-jawed, a neck like a fire hydrant, watched Marcus walk in and leaned over to the guy next to him. "You seeing this?" he said, not particularly quietly. The guy next to him, shorter, dark-haired, built like a wrestler, glanced over and started grinning. "Is that a minivan?" "With a car seat in it." "No way." "Bro, I'm looking at it." Marcus didn't look at them. He walked up to the intake table, set down his duffel bag, and gave his name to the staff sergeant behind it. Cole, Marcus A. The staff sergeant, a compact woman in her 40s, with the kind of face that had decided long ago not to waste energy on nonsense, ran her finger down the clipboard and checked him off without comment. "Barrack C, Bunk 12. Orientation starts at 0800. Don't be late." "Yes, ma'am." "Cole," she said, just before he turned. He looked back. She held his eyes for a second, not warmly, not coldly, just directly. "Welcome to Fort Dawson." He nodded once, picked up his bag, walked toward Barrack C. Behind him, fire hydrant neck said, just loud enough, "Somebody tell me that old dude is not in our unit." More laughter. Marcus kept walking. His name was Tyler Brance. Marcus learned that within the first 20 minutes of orientation, not because Tyler introduced himself, but because Tyler was the kind of man who made sure everyone in the room knew who he was. He talked in that particular way some men have, loud and easy and constantly, like the silence was an enemy that needed to be defeated at all times. Tyler was 26, former college football, built like a wall. He had the kind of face that got handed things: scholarships, attention, the benefit of the doubt. He was quick with a joke and slow to take anything seriously, and he had already recruited a second-in-command in the form of Derek Huang, the dark-haired wrestler type from outside, who laughed at everything Tyler said with a little too much enthusiasm. During orientation, they sat 3 rows back. Marcus sat near the front, alone, his duffel bag on the floor between his feet, arms folded, listening. The orientation sergeant, a hard-bitten man named Kowalski, with close-cropped gray hair and a flat affect that suggested he had seen the full spectrum of human stupidity and was no longer capable of being surprised by it, was going over the basic rules of conduct. You will address superior officers by rank and last name. You will maintain your assigned bunk and gear at the standard listed in your intake packet. You will not be late to any scheduled formation or training event, and you will treat your fellow recruits with basic human respect. He paused. Let that last one sit in the air. I don't care if you like each other. I don't care if you want to braid each other's hair and go to prom together. What I care about is that when you are on this base, you conduct yourself like a professional. Understood? A collective, "Yes, Sergeant Kowalski," from behind Marcus, just barely audible. Tyler whispering to Derek, "Think the old guy's gonna need a walker for the obstacle course?" Quiet snickering. Marcus didn't turn around. Sergeant Kowalski's eyes swept the room and landed, briefly, on the back rows. He said nothing, but his jaw tightened by about 2 millimeters. The barracks that night were the usual controlled chaos of men getting settled, gear being unpacked, first alliances being formed, the careful social geometry of who bunked near who and what that meant. Marcus unpacked quietly. He wasn't slow, but he wasn't in a hurry either. He had a system, everything in its place, efficient, like he'd done this 1,000 times and would do it 1,000 more. His clothes were plain and worn, but clean and folded with a precision that was almost unsettling. From the next bunk over, a young man named Ricky Torres watched him fold a shirt and couldn't help himself. "You do that in the military?" Marcus glanced at him. "Army, yes." "How long?" 12 years. Ricky whistled low. "When'd you get out?" 8 years ago. "And you're back." It wasn't quite a question. Marcus looked at him steadily. "I'm back." Ricky was 23, compact and wiry, from San Antonio, with an easy grin that didn't feel like it was trying to impress anyone. He held out his hand. "Ricky Torres." "Marcus Cole." They shook. "Any kids?" Ricky asked, nodding at the small drawing Marcus had taped carefully to the inside of his locker door. 2 stick figures under a yellow sun. "One, daughter, Lily. She's 7. Ricky smiled. A real one. The kind that doesn't require anything back. "She draw that for you?" "Before I left." "She know why you came back?" Marcus looked at the drawing for a moment. "She knows I made her a promise," he said. "That I'd be the same man when I got home that I was when I left." Ricky didn't say anything to that, just nodded slowly, like he understood that some things aren't really about boot camp. From across the barracks, Tyler's voice cut through. "Hey Torres, you making friends with Grandpa over there?" More laughter. Ricky rolled his eyes and said quietly to Marcus, "Don't mind him." "I don't," Marcus said. Simple. True. The first real test came on day 3. Physical assessment morning. A battery of tests designed to establish baseline fitness levels. Everyone knew the older recruits usually struggled here. It was understood. It was expected. And Tyler Brance, who had apparently decided that making Marcus Cole feel small was his personal calling in life, was looking forward to it, the way some men look forward to a steak dinner. They started with a 2-mile run. The pace was brutal from the jump, the young guns blasting out like they had something to prove, jockeying for position, all testosterone and morning energy. Tyler was near the front, running loose and easy, talking to Derek the whole time like he was on a Sunday jog. Marcus started in the middle of the pack, steady pace, not slow, not fast, just steady, like a machine that had been calibrated to run indefinitely. At the half-mile mark, 3 of the youngest recruits had already pushed too hard and were starting to fade. At the mile mark, Tyler was still at the front, and Marcus was still in the middle, still at the same pace, not a single breath wasted. At the 1.5 miles, Derek started dropping back, his face going red. At the finish line, Tyler crossed first, triumphant, arms out. Marcus crossed fourth. Tyler was still catching his breath, hands on his knees, when he looked up and saw Marcus standing there, barely breathing hard, hands loose at his sides, already reaching for his water bottle with the calm of a man who was just getting started. Tyler stared at him. "Lucky run, old man," he said finally. Marcus drank his water, didn't say a word. Tyler's eyes narrowed. Pull-ups came next. This was where Tyler expected the wheels to come off. This was the moment he had been waiting for. The visual humiliation of the old guy who showed up in a minivan with a car seat hanging from the bar and struggling to pull his aging body weight up while the young guns cranked out rep after rep. Tyler went first, hit 23, dropped clean, rolled his shoulders like a showman. "That's how it's done," he told the group. A few guys cheered. Marcus stepped up to the bar. He gripped it, and then he started pulling. Slow at first, deliberate, controlled, each rep clean and full, chin clearing the bar every single time. No kipping, no momentum tricks, just pure pulling strength, rep after grinding rep. At 10, Tyler was still smirking. At 15, the smirk started to slip. At 20, the barracks area had gone quiet. At 23, Tyler's number, Marcus didn't stop. 24, 25, 26. He stopped at 27. Not because he couldn't do more. He dropped from the bar with the same controlled, unhurried movement he'd used to grip it, stood straight, and stepped back. The silence lasted about 2 full seconds. Then Ricky Torres said, quietly, "Okay then." A few of the other recruits let out a low, collective sound, somewhere between surprise and acknowledgement. Tyler said nothing, but something shifted in his face. Not respect. Not yet. Something uglier than that. Something that happens when a man who's never been outperformed before suddenly is, and doesn't know how to process it gracefully. He started watching Marcus the way a dog watches something it can't quite figure out. By the end of week 1, the mockery had changed character. It was no longer casual, no longer just jokes passed around for easy laughs. Tyler had made it personal. Every meal, every formation, every transition between training blocks, there was a comment waiting. Sometimes subtle, sometimes not. "Hey Cole, you call home? Make sure the babysitter knows you'll be late." "Yo, old man, does your back hurt? I can get Sergeant Kowalski to bring you a heating pad." 20 years ago, maybe. Now? Come on, man. The rest of the recruits existed in that uncomfortable middle space most people occupy when they're watching something unfair happen and don't quite have the courage to name it. Some of them were beginning to sense something was off. Ricky had stopped laughing at Tyler's jokes entirely. A couple of others, a big quiet man named Okonkwo from Georgia and a former EMT named Walsh from Colorado, had started positioning themselves in Marcus's orbit at meals. Not saying much, just present. But no one intervened, not directly, and Marcus never asked them to. He absorbed it all the way a good wall absorbs rain. Completely, without comment, without cracking. It drove Tyler absolutely insane. "I don't get this guy," Tyler said to Derek one night, lying on his bunk, staring at the ceiling. "Most guys, you get in their head. You get a reaction. This dude doesn't even blink." "Maybe he just doesn't care," Derek offered. "Everybody cares." "Maybe he's got more important stuff to care about." Tyler rolled over and looked at Derek like he'd said something in a foreign language. "Everybody cares," he said again, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. On day 9, during a 60-pound ruck march through 15 kilometers of Virginia hill country, Tyler finally got what he was looking for. Not a reaction. Worse than a reaction. He got a story. The march was brutal. Late September heat pressing down, packs digging into shoulders, the kind of sustained physical suffering that strips pretense away and leaves people talking in ways they wouldn't otherwise. Tyler had managed to fall into step beside Marcus somewhere around the 8-kilometer mark. Derek was 50 yards back, struggling. For a while they just walked. The rhythm of boots on packed dirt, the sound of labored breathing. Then Tyler said, conversationally, almost like he was making small talk, "Heard you were Army. What happened? Why'd you get out?" Marcus kept walking. "Personal reasons." "Personal reasons," Tyler repeated, tasting it. "What's that mean? They kick you out?" "No." "Injury?" "No." "Then what?" Marcus's jaw moved slightly. Just slightly. "My wife got sick." Silence for several steps. "She okay now?" "She died." The words landed flat and heavy, the way the truth tends to land when it's been said so many times it's lost its ability to surprise the speaker, but not the listener. Tyler processed this. To his credit, he was quiet for maybe 15 seconds. Then, "So, what are you even doing here, man? Seriously, what's the point? You got a kid at home, no wife, you're, what, pushing 40? You really think you belong here with us?" Marcus didn't answer. "I'm serious," Tyler said. "I'm not trying to be mean. I'm asking for real. Like, what is this proving? To who?" Marcus walked another 20 yards before he said anything. "You done?" he asked. "You done?" A second time. Flat. Quiet. Tyler shut his mouth. They walked the rest of the kilometer in silence. But something had been opened, and Tyler, being Tyler, was going to walk right back through it. That evening, after the march, after the debrief, after the showers, Marcus sat on the edge of his bunk and carefully opened the letter that had been waiting in his mail slot since morning. He read it slowly. Then he folded it back up, placed it in the same breast pocket as the drawing, and sat very still for a moment. Ricky, 2 bunks over, looked up from his book. "You good?" Marcus sat quiet for a beat. "She had a nightmare last night. Woke up at 3 in the morning, the sitter said. Kept asking where I was." Ricky set the book down. "She's 7, Marcus said. It wasn't an explanation. It was the whole entire reason. Everything. Compressed into 2 words. "She know you're doing this for her?" Ricky asked. Marcus looked at the drawing on the inside of his locker door. 2 stick figures. Yellow sun. "Daddy come home safe." "She will," he said. On the morning of day 12, during the first serious hand-to-hand combat training block, Sergeant Kowalski paired recruits off for technique drills. He paired Marcus with Tyler. Whether this was deliberate or coincidental was the kind of question Fort Dawson didn't answer directly. They squared off on the mat. Tyler was 2 inches taller, 30 pounds heavier, and 20 years younger. He had the easy physical confidence of a man who had won most of his fights before they started, just by the way he held himself. Marcus stood across from him, relaxed, still, like a man waiting for a bus. "Let's go, old man," Tyler said. Not cruel this time, more like eager. "Show me what you got." Kowalski called the start. Tyler came in fast, shoulder drop, left arm reach, trying to clinch and use his weight advantage. Marcus sidestepped him. Clean, surgical, not a wasted inch of movement. Tyler came back around, this time with a combination, hands working. Marcus slipped left, caught Tyler's right arm at the wrist, redirected, and Tyler found himself stumbling forward into empty air, his own momentum working against him. He turned around. For the first time, there was something in Tyler's eyes that wasn't mockery. He reset, breathed, came in lower this time, smarter, slower. Their exchanges built into something real, back and forth. Tyler was genuinely good, strong, athletic, harder to read than he looked. He landed 2 clean touches to Marcus's ribs. Marcus absorbed them without any visible reaction. And then, on Tyler's next charge, Marcus did something small. A subtle redirection, one hand on Tyler's elbow, one on his shoulder, a pivot, a controlled drop, and Tyler was on the mat, face down, Marcus's knee at the base of his spine, and Tyler's arm locked behind him in a hold that made moving feel like a bad idea. The whole room was watching now. Kowalski didn't call it. He let it breathe. Tyler, face pressed against the mat, breathing hard, said, "All right, all right." Marcus released him immediately, stepped back, offered him a hand up. Tyler stared at the hand for a second. Then he took it. He got up, rolled his shoulder, looked at Marcus for a long moment. "Where did you learn that?" he asked. And for the first time, just for a second, it wasn't a challenge. It was an actual question. Marcus just picked up his water bottle. Across the room, Ricky Torres and Okonkwo exchanged a look. And Sergeant Kowalski, standing at the edge of the mat with his arms crossed, watching Marcus walk away, allowed himself the very smallest, most carefully controlled nod. That night, Marcus sat outside the barracks on a low concrete step, looking up at a sky that had finally cleared. Stars spread wide above Fort Dawson the way they only can in open country, away from city lights. Deep and cold and indifferent, and somehow still comforting. He had the drawing in his hand, unfolded. "Daddy, come home safe." He traced the letters with his thumb. The crayon was waxy and slightly smudged. Lily had pressed hard when she wrote it. She always pressed hard, like she wanted the words to last. He folded it back, tucked it away. Somewhere behind him, the barracks door opened and closed. Footsteps, and then Ricky's voice. "You not sleeping?" "In a bit." Ricky sat down next to him on the step. They were quiet for a while, the good kind of quiet that happens between people who don't need to fill every silence. "You know they're saying things," Ricky said eventually. "Tyler and Derek. About you. Saying you don't belong here. Saying you're going to wash out." "I know." "Does it bother you?" Marcus looked at the stars. "I've been where I needed to be before," he said, "when it cost more than they could even picture. I was there. I did what needed doing. And I came home." He paused. "If I'm here now, I'm here for a reason. What they think about that is their business." Ricky was quiet for a moment. "What reason?" he asked. "Lily needs to look at her father," Marcus said, "and see a man who didn't quit." The stars burned on above Fort Dawson. The minivan sat in the parking lot, with the crayon drawings on the dashboard and the broken car seat in the back. And somewhere on Marcus Cole's back, beneath his plain cotton t-shirt, a tattoo that he'd carried for 15 years waited in silence. A coiled viper, a shattered skull, a name that meant nothing to most people on this earth, and everything to a very small, very specific few. He didn't know then, sitting on those steps under those stars, that in 6 days, Colonel Harrow would walk into a training session, take one look at that tattoo, and go completely white. He didn't know what that moment would cost him, or what it would give back. The days at Fort Dawson had a rhythm to them, and like all rhythms, once you found it, you either locked in or you fell apart. Marcus locked in. He was up before reveille every morning, not by much, maybe 10 minutes, but those 10 minutes mattered to him. He used them the same way each day, sitting on the edge of his bunk in the dark, both feet flat on the floor, hands resting on his knees, breathing. Not meditating in any formal sense, just breathing, letting himself be present before the noise of the day swallowed everything. It was something he'd started doing when Sarah was in her last months, when the hospital smell clung to his clothes and Lily kept asking questions he didn't know how to answer. He'd learned that if he didn't take those quiet minutes for himself, the weight of the day would get inside him before he was ready for it. So he breathed. And then he got up, made his bunk with the kind of precision that made the other recruits uncomfortable, and moved through the morning like a man who knew exactly where he was going. Tyler noticed. Of course Tyler noticed. Tyler noticed everything about Marcus, the way a person can't stop poking at a sore tooth. Not because they want to, but because something about it demands attention. "You sleep at all?" Tyler asked one morning, catching Marcus already dressed and standing near the window when the rest of the barracks was still groaning into consciousness. His tone had that edge it always carried, somewhere between genuine curiosity and the beginning of a taunt, like Tyler himself hadn't decided yet which direction he was heading. "Enough," Marcus said. 4 hours? 5? "Enough." Tyler stared at him for a second longer than necessary, then shook his head and started pulling on his boots. "You're a weird dude, Cole. I'm just saying." Marcus didn't respond. He was watching the parking lot through the window. His minivan was still out there, exactly where he'd left it, visible from this angle in the early gray light. He couldn't see it clearly enough to make out the crayon drawings on the dashboard, but he knew they were there. He didn't need to see them. He knew they were there. That was enough. The second week of training was where Fort Dawson started separating the men who had come prepared from the men who had come optimistic. Sergeant Kowalski increased the physical load systematically and without apology. Longer rucks, harder PT blocks, less recovery time between stations. The purpose wasn't to destroy anyone. The purpose was pressure. Because pressure, as Kowalski was fond of reminding them, was the only honest test of what a man was actually made of. "Anybody can perform when it's comfortable," he told them during a formation brief on the morning of day 14. "Give me a man who performs when he's exhausted, when he's hungry, when every muscle in his body is telling him to quit. That's the man I'm interested in." He didn't look at anyone in particular when he said it, but 3 people in that formation felt like he was looking directly at them. Tyler Brance, because it was a challenge, and Tyler collected challenges the way some men collect debt. Ricky Torres, because Ricky was genuinely working harder than he'd expected and quietly proud of it. And Marcus Cole, because the words landed somewhere deep and personal and true, in a way that had nothing to do with boot camp. The obstacle course was introduced on day 15. It was a serious piece of engineering. 12 stations of progressively more demanding physical and mental challenges spread across a half-mile layout, culminating in a 10-foot wall and a 40-yard crawl through a low tunnel under live stress conditions. Kowalski walked them through it once, pointing out each station with the enthusiasm of a man describing a tax form, and then sent them through it in pairs. The pairings were by alphabetical roster. Marcus was paired with a recruit named Bennett. Young, nervous, solid. And they moved through the course together without drama. Marcus was smooth in a way that was almost clinical. Not flashy, not trying to prove anything, just functionally efficient at each station. Every movement economical, every transition clean. They posted the fourth best time of the morning session. Tyler, paired with Derek, posted the best time. He made sure everyone knew. 16:42, he announced at lunch, loud enough for the whole table to hear. That's what a clean run looks like. He glanced down toward Marcus's end of the table. How'd the old man do? Top 10? Fourth, Ricky said flatly, not looking up from his food. A beat. Fourth, Tyler repeated. Then he smiled, the specific smile of a man recalibrating in real time. Out of how many pairs? 11. So, middle of the pack. Good effort, Cole. He said it like he was tossing $1 in a beggar's cup. Marcus was eating. He didn't respond. He didn't even look up. And that complete absence of reaction, made Tyler's smile harden at the edges in a way that Ricky noticed and filed away. What Tyler didn't know was that Marcus had deliberately paced that run. He'd clocked his partner Bennett at the first 2 stations and seen the young man was struggling with the rope traverse, arms shaking, technique breaking down under fatigue. So Marcus had adjusted his own pace to stay with him, giving quiet, specific instructions at each station, not unlike the way a man recalibrates everything in his life when he has a 7-year-old daughter who needs him to come home in one piece. When Bennett posted the fourth best time and looked over at Marcus with a mix of relief and quiet gratitude, Marcus just nodded once and moved on. He didn't explain this to anyone. He didn't need to. On day 17, the training shifted to tactical decision-making scenarios, small unit problems that required recruits to think under physical stress. Kowalski called them fog exercises. The recruits were given incomplete information, physical pressure, and a problem to solve. There were no perfect answers. The point was watching how men thought when the comfortable structure of clear instructions was taken away. Marcus had done versions of these exercises before, many times, under conditions that made Fort Dawson look like a church picnic. He moved through them with a quietness that was becoming, to some of the recruits, increasingly difficult to dismiss as luck or age. There was something about the way he read a problem, the stillness that preceded each decision, the speed and precision of the execution once the decision was made, that didn't look like the product of training alone. It looked like the product of necessity. Like a man who had made decisions like these before, and had lived with the results, and had carried them home inside him. Sergeant Kowalski watched, said nothing, but watched. On day 18, Tyler pushed too far for the first time. It happened during a water break, after a grueling morning of stress inoculation drills. The whole group was scattered around the training area, some sitting, some standing, everyone breathing hard and hot and irritated in the particular way that extreme physical exertion, combined with sustained mental pressure, tends to produce. Tyler dropped down onto a bench near Marcus and Derek, and it was clear from the moment he opened his mouth that he was in one of those moods where the filter was down. Kowalski kept watching you today, Tyler said to Marcus, not as a compliment, more like an accusation. Marcus drank his water. You notice that? Tyler pushed. Every fog exercise. He's watching you. Not us. You. Maybe he's making sure I don't have a heart attack, Marcus said, dry, not looking up. A couple of the nearby recruits laughed, surprised laughs, the kind that come out before the person decides whether it was appropriate. Tyler didn't laugh. I'm serious. What is your deal, man? Like, actually. Who are you? Marcus looked at him then, steady, level, unhurried. I'm a guy trying to get through the program, same as you. You're not the same as me. No, Marcus agreed. I'm not. It was said without heat, without pride, just as a simple, factual acknowledgement. And somehow, that was worse than if Marcus had been arrogant about it. Because arrogance, Tyler knew how to fight. This quiet, absolute certainty, he didn't know what to do with. The Army, right? Tyler said. His voice had changed slightly, still sharp, but digging now, looking for something specific. 12 years. What unit? I'd rather not get into that. Why? You embarrassed about it? No. Then what? It's classified? Tyler said it with a small laugh, like the idea was slightly ridiculous. Marcus held his eyes for a moment. That's generally why people don't get into it. The laugh died. Derek shifted in his seat. A couple of other recruits who had been listening went very still. Tyler leaned forward. Come on, for real. Nobody here's going to... Tyler. Marcus's voice didn't rise, didn't harden, didn't do any of the things that would have made it easy to push back against. It just became very, very clear. Let it go. Tyler stared at him. Then he sat back, crossed his arms, looked away. That was the first moment Derek Huang, who had been Tyler's shadow and echo for 2.5 weeks, looked at Marcus Cole with something other than amusement. He looked at him the way you look at something you've been misjudging, and the realization isn't entirely comfortable. 3 days later was when Tyler finally found something that got through. It was evening. The training day was over. Most of the recruits were in the barracks, writing letters, or staring at phones, or doing the low-energy nothing that men do when their bodies are spent and their brains are still running. Ricky was reading. Okonkwo was writing. Long, careful letters home that he protected with the privacy of a man who kept his inner life close. Marcus was sitting on his bunk with the letter from Lily's babysitter, Mrs. Caldwell, spread open on his knee. Mrs. Caldwell was a 64-year-old retired school teacher from 3 blocks over, who had been looking after Lily since Sarah got sick, and she wrote letters in a looping, careful cursive that Marcus found deeply comforting, even when the content wasn't. Tonight, the content wasn't. Lily had had 2 bad nights in a row. She'd stopped eating her dinner on Wednesday. She'd told Mrs. Caldwell she dreamed that Marcus went away like her mom went away. And then Lily woke up and couldn't stop crying until 4 in the morning. Marcus read that part 3 times. He folded the letter, put it away, sat very still for a long moment, with his hands flat on his thighs. He didn't hear Tyler come over. Didn't notice him until Tyler was already there, leaning against the bunk post, looking at Marcus with that particular expression that only showed up when Tyler was genuinely curious about something and hadn't yet worked out how to weaponize it. Bad news? Tyler asked. His tone, surprisingly, wasn't mean. It was almost human. No, Marcus said. You got that look. I'm fine. Tyler was quiet for a second. Then, almost like he was testing the words as he said them. The kid missing you? Marcus looked at him. Tyler shrugged. I got a little sister. When I went to college the first year, she had a hard time. Mom said she cried every Sunday night. He said it plainly, not performing anything, not building toward a point, just saying it. Marcus studied him for a moment. For just a second, a genuine, unguarded second, he saw past the neck like a fire hydrant, and the constant noise, and the need to be the biggest thing in every room. Saw something younger and less certain underneath. She'll be okay, Marcus said. Lily. She's tougher than she looks. She sounds like her dad, Tyler said. It hung there. It could have been a truce. It almost was. But then Derek came over, saw the two of them talking, and something about the dynamic, about Tyler dropping the performance, seemed to make Derek anxious, like he needed to restore the natural order of things. So Derek said, "What are you two bonding over? Daddy issues?" And just like that, the moment closed. Tyler laughed, that automatic social laugh he deployed to signal alignment with his audience. And then, because Tyler couldn't leave well enough alone when there was an audience expecting something from him, he added, "Must be rough, though, being here while your kid's having nightmares about you disappearing like her mom did." The barracks went quiet, and not the good kind. Ricky looked up from his book. Okonkwo put down his pen. Two other recruits near the back stopped what they were doing. Marcus didn't move. His hands were still flat on his thighs. His face was still. But something changed in the room. Something that had nothing to do with what anyone could see or hear. Something that came from Marcus, invisible and absolute. The way a change in air pressure comes before weather that's been building for days. Tyler felt it. He saw, for the first time in 3 weeks, something behind Marcus's eyes that was not calm. It wasn't rage, not exactly. It was something colder and more controlled than rage. The way a controlled burn is technically not the same thing as a wildfire, even when it's consuming the same amount of space. Tyler opened his mouth, then closed it. "That's my wife you're talking about," Marcus said. Quiet, even. Every word landing with the precise weight of a man who chose each one deliberately. "And that's my daughter. You don't get to do that." Tyler swallowed. "I was just," he started. "I know what you were doing," Marcus said. "I've known what you were doing since day one. That's fine. You want to push at me because I make you uncomfortable, and you don't know how to process that? Fine, push. But you do not bring Sarah into this room. And you do not bring Lily." Silence. Complete. The kind that has weight. Tyler, for the first time since Fort Dawson, did not have an answer. His mouth moved slightly, searching, but nothing came out that was worth the air it would cost him. Derek, to his credit, looked at the floor. Marcus picked the letter back up, refolded it, placed it in the breast pocket alongside the drawing, and lay down on his bunk. He put one arm across his eyes. He didn't say anything else. He didn't have to. Ricky Torres looked at Tyler for a long, measured moment. Then he went back to his book. Okonkwo picked his pen back up. One by one, the room came back to life. The way a room does when a moment has passed that everyone understood, but no one was quite ready to talk about. Tyler walked back to his own bunk and sat there in the specific quiet of a man sitting alone inside a mistake he can't take back and isn't yet ready to learn from. The next morning, something had shifted. Not dramatically, not some movie montage transformation, but the mockery from Tyler had pulled back, like a tide, uncertain about its direction. He still watched Marcus. He still occasionally made the kind of low-register comment that kept up appearances in front of Derek. But the cruelty had gone out of it. And in its place was something Tyler probably wouldn't have been able to name. Something that looked, from a distance, like the beginning of a question. What Sergeant Kowalski noticed, because Kowalski noticed everything, logged it, filed it, and said nothing until the right moment, was that Marcus Cole had become a kind of gravitational center in the group. Not by trying to, not by performing leadership or pushing his experience or making himself visible, but simply by being exactly who he was, consistently and without apology, until the people around him started organizing themselves according to him the way iron filings organize around a magnet. The recruits ate near him. They asked his opinion on equipment and form and technique, carefully, casually, like they were just making conversation. Ricky deferred to him on fog exercises. Okonkwo, a quiet, physically formidable man who had barely spoken 20 words to anyone in 3 weeks, had started working with Marcus one-on-one in the evenings on submission techniques, the two of them on a spare mat, Okonkwo learning with the patient intensity of a man who understood that skill required time. Even Bennett, young, nervous Bennett, who Marcus had paced through the obstacle course, had started showing up earlier in the mornings, mimicking Marcus's habit of sitting in the quiet before the day began. He didn't know why he was doing it. He couldn't have articulated it. But he was doing it. That was day 22. Day 23 brought rain, hard and gray, the kind that goes sideways in the wind, and with it, the first major team exercise. Kowalski split the unit into 3 squads of 4 and sent them out on a cross-terrain navigation problem with tactical decision points built in. Real-world pressure, simulated conditions, individual and collective performance, both on evaluation. Marcus, Ricky, Okonkwo, and a quiet former EMT named Walsh formed one squad. Tyler, Derek, Bennett, and a sharp-eyed woman named Arias formed another. The exercise lasted 6 hours. When both squads returned to the rally point, soaking and muddy and exhausted, the evaluators tallied the decision points. Marcus's squad: 8 correct decisions out of 10. 0 casualties in the simulation. Fastest completion time. Tyler's squad: 6 correct decisions. 2 simulated casualties. 3rd fastest time. Kowalski read the results in front of everyone without editorial comment. Tyler stood there with rain running down his face, listening to the numbers. And Marcus stood across from him. Same rain, same mud, same exhaustion. And Tyler looked over at him just once. A quick glance, almost involuntary. The way your eyes go to something that has been demanding your attention long enough that eventually you just look directly at it. Marcus was already looking somewhere else. Not dismissively, not triumphantly, just elsewhere. Already moving on. And something in Tyler's chest did something complicated that had nothing to do with competition and everything to do with a particular pain of realizing that the man you've been trying to diminish this whole time has never once been thinking about you the way you've been thinking about him. That evening, Marcus sat on the concrete step again. No stars tonight, too much cloud cover. Just the ambient light of the base and the distant sound of Fort Dawson running its nighttime machinery. He had called Mrs. Caldwell earlier. Lily had been better today. She'd eaten dinner, mac and cheese with the little dinosaur pasta shape she liked, and she'd made a new drawing that Mrs. Caldwell was mailing to him. She'd asked if Marcus could call tomorrow at 7, because that was after her bath and before her book, and that was her best time. "Tell her 7 is perfect," Marcus had said. He sat on the step now, thinking about that. About the geometry of a 7-year-old's day. About bath time and books, and the small architecture of routine that kept a child from being afraid. He was building something here at Fort Dawson. He knew that. Not just his own fitness or credentials or whatever the program was designed to produce in a man. He was building something for Lily to see. A model. A shape she could hold in her mind when she was older, and the world started asking her what strength looked like. He wanted the answer she carried to be the right one. Not the kind that broke things, the kind that protected them. Behind him, the barracks door opened. He didn't turn around. He already knew the step pattern by now. Okonkwo sat down on his left. They were quiet for a while. "You all right?" Okonkwo asked finally. Not prying, just the way a man asks another man when he's been watching closely enough to wonder. "Yeah," Marcus said. Tyler's backing off. I know. You knew he would. I knew eventually. Okonkwo was quiet for a moment. What did you do? In the army. Before. Marcus breathed in, breathed out. Things that needed doing. And after? When you got out? I was a father. He said it like that was the full answer. Because it was. Okonkwo nodded slowly, like he was filing something important away. There's a man like you, Okonkwo said, after a pause. In my village, back home. Old man, doesn't say much, but everyone turns toward him. Like a compass. He glanced at Marcus. People always want to know what the compass has seen. That's why they look at it. Marcus was quiet for a moment. The compass just points north, he said finally. It doesn't have to explain itself. Okonkwo smiled. Small, private, real. They sat in the overcast dark while the base moved around them, and Marcus touched the breast pocket once with 2 fingers, drawing and letter, both there, both safe, and said nothing more. In 6 days, Colonel Harrow would walk through the door of the training hall. But Marcus didn't know that yet. He was thinking about dinosaur pasta and bath time and a phone call at 7. He was thinking about what it meant to come home the same man you left as, and whether, after everything that had lived inside him for 15 years, that was still possible. The phone call happened at 7, exactly as planned. Marcus stood just outside the barracks, back against the exterior wall, phone pressed to his ear. And when Lily's voice came through, still slightly hoarse from her bath, bright and familiar and real, something in his chest that had been running on tension for 3 weeks quietly let go of a breath it had been holding. "Daddy, I made you a drawing." Mrs. Caldwell told me. She's mailing it. "It's a horse, but I gave it wings because regular horses are boring." That's smart thinking. "Are you okay? Your voice sounds different." He smiled at the dark beyond the base perimeter. "I'm okay, Lilybird. I'm tired, but I'm okay." "Tired like after you mow the lawn, or tired like when you used to come home from—" She paused, choosing her words with the particular care of a 7-year-old who had learned that some topics needed handling. "From before?" He didn't answer that one right away. He looked up at the sky, still overcast, still no stars. "Tired, like after I mowed the lawn," he said, "and do about 100 push-ups, and carry something heavy up a hill. But the good kind of tired." "The good kind of tired," she repeated, tasting the phrase. "Is that real?" "Very real." "Okay." She seemed satisfied with this. Then, "Daddy, some of the kids at school said their dads never had to go away for training. They said that only happens to young people." Marcus straightened slightly. "What did you tell them?" "I told them my dad is stronger than their dads." He laughed. Actually laughed. A real one, full and involuntary. The kind that Fort Dawson hadn't produced in him once until this moment. "Is that right?" "I showed them your army picture, the one in my backpack." "Lily, they were very impressed, Daddy." "I bet they were." There was a small pause, the particular kind of pause a child holds before asking something they've been building up to. Marcus had learned to read those pauses the way a sailor reads weather. "Are you going to stay this time?" she asked, quietly, without drama. The way children ask the questions that cost the most, because they haven't yet learned to dress them up. Marcus leaned his head back against the wall. "I'm going to finish what I started," he said. "And then I'm coming home. And I'm going to stay." Another pause. "Promise?" "On every drawing you've ever made me." She was quiet for a second. Then, "That's a lot of drawings, Daddy." "I know it is." "Okay," she said. Like that settled it. like a 7-year-old's logic had the authority to make it true. "I love you." "I love you, Lilybird. Get some sleep." He ended the call and stood there for a moment without moving. Then he pushed off the wall, went back inside, and slept better than he had in a week. Day 25 arrived, with Sergeant Kowalski in a mood that the recruits had learned to read quickly and respect completely. There was a specific quality to Kowalski's silences. Different ones meant different things, and the silence he was carrying this morning was the kind that meant he had something specific in mind that nobody was going to enjoy, but that he considered absolutely necessary. He confirmed this at morning formation. "Today we're doing live stress scenarios," he said. "Full contact sparring drills, integrated with a tactical decision problem. You will perform the physical task, make the tactical call, and then immediately go hands-on with your assigned partner. The point is not to win the fight. The point is to make clear, correct decisions when you're already in pain and out of breath. Understood?" "Yes, Sergeant Kowalski." He read off the pairings. Marcus and Tyler. Again. If Kowalski caught any reaction from either man, he gave no indication. He moved through the rest of the brief without looking up from his clipboard. Tyler looked over at Marcus across the formation. His expression was unreadable. Not hostile exactly. Not anything exactly. Just watchful. The way he'd been watchful for days now, circling something he hadn't fully committed to approaching. Marcus looked straight ahead. The morning training block ran hard. By the time they reached the sparring component, every recruit was running on fumes, physically depleted, mentally wrung out. The kind of deep tired that strips away the performances people put on for each other and leaves something raw underneath. That rawness was the point. Kowalski set up the sparring pairs around the mat area and walked the perimeter, watching, clipboard tucked under his arm, saying almost nothing. He let the pairs work. He let the fatigue do its job. Marcus and Tyler squared off. What was different this time, and Marcus felt it immediately, was the quality of Tyler's attention. Last time, in the technique drill 2 weeks ago, Tyler had come in with confidence and physical aggression. That version of Tyler was something Marcus could read cleanly. This version was something else. Tyler was tired, and beneath the tiredness was something complicated. Something that had been accumulating across 25 days of watching Marcus absorb everything Fort Dawson threw at him, without breaking, without bending, without giving Tyler the reaction he'd spent weeks trying to produce. They moved. Tyler was more technical this time, more patient. He'd been watching Marcus, learning the way Marcus redirected momentum, and he'd clearly been thinking about how to counter it. He'd worked on his base. He came in lower, slower, felt for leverage before committing. It was genuinely impressive. Marcus noticed it and filed it. Back and forth across the mat, controlled but hard. Both men working, both men feeling the burn. A couple of times, Tyler got inside Marcus's guard and landed real contact. A shoulder check, an elbow clip. Once a clean grab that almost took Marcus off his feet. Almost. The recruits around the mat had gone quiet. This wasn't the kind of watching that was waiting for a humiliation. This was the kind of watching that recognizes two capable men working at full capacity and understands it's witnessing something real. Ricky had his arms crossed and his jaw set. Okonkwo watched with the focused stillness of a man studying. They went for nearly 8 minutes, far longer than any other pair, before Kowalski called a pause for water. Both men breathing hard, both men still standing. Tyler took his water and sat on the edge of the mat and looked at his own hands for a moment. Then he looked at Marcus, who was drinking steadily, controlled, that familiar economic stillness settling back over him like a coat. You held back, Tyler said, not accusing, just stating what he'd felt. Marcus lowered his water bottle. Some. Why? Marcus looked at him directly. Because the point wasn't to take you down. Tyler was quiet, turning that over. Then, what was the point? Same thing it always is, Marcus said. To do what needs doing, not more. The water break ended. They went back on the mat. The second round was different, less controlled, the fatigue deeper now, both men running closer to their actual limits. Tyler was still working well, but the precision was beginning to cost him, and Marcus could feel it. Could feel the frustration building in Tyler's grip, in the quicker decisions, the shortened patience. And then Kowalski called the tactical decision point, a verbal scenario, fast, requiring an immediate correct response while physically engaged. Tyler fumbled the call. Wrong answer, wrong reasoning. The kind of mistake you make when your brain is 2 steps behind your body. It shouldn't have mattered. It was a training drill. Everyone made mistakes under pressure. That was the point. But something about the combination, the physical near misses against Marcus, the wrong call in front of everyone, the accumulated weight of 25 days of a competition Tyler had been running almost entirely in his own head, cracked something open. He came back in hard. Too hard. A grab that was past the boundary of the drill, real force behind it, driven by something that wasn't technique anymore. Marcus felt the change immediately, felt the shift from controlled sparring into something with edges. He let Tyler push him back 2 steps, let him feel like the force was working. Then he moved. It was over in about 4 seconds. A quarter-turn deflection of Tyler's momentum, one hand catching Tyler's lead arm at the wrist, the other at the elbow. A short, precise pivot, and Tyler went down to the mat hard, face first, Marcus's knee at the base of his spine. Tyler's arm locked behind him in that same submission hold from the technique drill 2 weeks ago. Only this time, there was nothing exploratory about it. Tyler went completely still. The mat area was silent. Marcus held it for exactly the time required to make the point. Then he released, stood, stepped back, and offered his hand down. Tyler lay there for a moment, breathing. Then he pushed himself up. Didn't take the hand this time, just pushed himself up, and stood, rolling his shoulder, jaw tight. "You've done that before," he said. His voice was different. Something had broken through the surface. "That's not what they teach you in the army." "No," Marcus agreed. "Then where—" "Tyler," Kowalski's voice from behind them, flat and final. Tyler closed his mouth, looked at Kowalski, then back at Marcus. "Later," he said to Marcus, quietly. Not a threat, more like a request. Marcus held his eyes, then nodded, once. Later came sooner than either of them expected. The afternoon block wrapped, the debrief ran long, and by the time the recruits were released for the evening, the energy in the barracks was the low, spent kind that produces either real conversation or complete silence, depending on the man. Tyler chose conversation. He came and sat on the bunk across from Marcus. Not in the aggressive, territorial way he'd used early on, but straight-backed and direct, like a man who had decided something and was committing to it. Ricky looked up from his book. Okonkwo, one bunk over, went slightly still. Not pretending not to listen, but not intruding either. "I've been an ass to you," Tyler said. Marcus was unlacing his boots. He looked up. "From day one," Tyler continued. "The minivan thing, the jokes, all of it." "That was—" He stopped. Started again. "The thing about your wife and Lily. That was wrong. That was actually wrong, and I knew it when I said it." Marcus looked at him for a long, steady moment. "Yeah," he said finally. "It was. I'm saying I'm sorry for it." The word sorry from Tyler Brance seemed to surprise Tyler Brance almost as much as anyone in the room. Like he'd been holding it at arm's length for days and had finally just put it down. Marcus studied him, not with suspicion, just reading him. The way Marcus read everything, quietly and thoroughly. "Okay," Marcus said. Tyler blinked. "Okay?" "Okay." Marcus went back to his boot. "What made you so angry?" Tyler opened his mouth, closed it, looked at the floor for a second. "I don't know. You showed up and you were—" He gestured vaguely, like he was reaching for a word that didn't quite exist. "You were so solid, like nothing touched you, and I kept pushing and nothing." "Things touched me," Marcus said quietly. "You didn't show it." "I didn't show you," Marcus corrected. "That's different." Tyler absorbed that. "The stuff about your wife, your daughter." He shook his head. "I went too far." "You were looking for a lever," Marcus said. "Something to move me with. You thought if you found the right pressure point, I'd crack open and you'd see something you could work with." Tyler stared at him. Something in his expression shifted, discomfort, and beneath it, something closer to shame. Because Marcus had named it exactly, and Tyler knew it, and being known that precisely by someone you've been trying to hurt is its own particular kind of accountability. "That's a hard way to operate," Marcus said, not unkindly, just honestly. "Yeah," Tyler said. "I'm starting to figure that out." Ricky Torres turned a page in his book, very deliberately not looking up, in the way of a man who is granting two people their privacy while remaining exactly where he is. "You were Army," Tyler said after a moment. "And there's something about the way you move, the way you handle pressure, the way you—" He paused. "That hold you put me in today. I've trained for 2 years. I've worked with guys who did 6 years active duty. I've never felt anything like that." Marcus was quiet. "What unit were you in?" Tyler asked. Quieter than he'd asked it before. Without the needling quality, without the angle. Just asking. Marcus sat back and looked at Tyler for a long time. "I was in a unit that doesn't have a public record," he said. "That's—" Tyler started. "I'm serious," Marcus said. "Not special forces in the way people talk about it. Not Rangers, not Delta. Not any of the ones that have names people know." He paused. "A lot of what I did, I don't talk about. Not because it's classified, because it's finished. It was a life I lived, and then I left. When Sarah got sick, I got out, and I chose to be something else." He looked at the locker door, at the drawing of 2 stick figures under a yellow sun. "I chose that." Tyler followed his gaze to the drawing, looked at it for a moment. "And now you're here," Tyler said. "And now I'm here." "Because of her." "Because of her." Tyler was quiet for a long stretch. Then, slowly, he said, "I didn't see that. When you drove up in the minivan, I saw— "I know what you saw," Marcus said, not bitterly. "Worn-out clothes, old car, a guy who probably shouldn't be there." He half smiled. "I looked exactly like what you thought I was." "You look like somebody's dad," Tyler said. "That's the most important thing on the list," Marcus said. Something moved across Tyler's face. Something genuine. The complicated kind of genuine that doesn't sit easily, but that you can't fake. He looked at Marcus, and for the first time in 25 days, there was nothing competitive in it. "I'm sorry," Tyler said again, quieter this time, more private. Marcus nodded. "I heard you the first time." Tyler almost smiled. It was late when Marcus finally lay down, arm across his eyes in his usual way. the barracks settling into the low sounds of men sleeping, or nearly sleeping, around him. Ricky's breathing had gone deep and regular. Okonkwo's bunk was still. Even Derek, who slept like a man with no unresolved feelings about anything, was out. Marcus lay awake for a while, not from anxiety, from something older and quieter than anxiety. The specific wakefulness that comes when a man is getting close to something he's been moving toward for a long time, and can feel it in the air, and isn't afraid of it exactly, but is very, very awake. He thought about Lily. He thought about Sarah. He thought about the last conversation he'd had with his old commanding officer, 15 years ago, the week before he transferred out. Sitting across a metal desk in a room he wasn't supposed to be able to describe to anyone. The man had looked at him and said, "You understand that what you carry doesn't stop being what it is just because you stop doing the work." Marcus had been 23. He hadn't fully understood it then. He understood it now. What you carry doesn't stop being what it is. He touched the breast pocket once, drawing and letter, both there, and closed his eyes. Morning came, gray and cold and serious. Day 28 started with a formation announcement from Kowalski that stopped several conversations mid-sentence. Colonel Harrow will be conducting a command inspection and evaluation visit on Day 30, Kowalski said. He will observe a full training block. His assessment will factor into the program completion recommendations for each of you. Conduct yourselves accordingly. Murmurs moved through the formation like water through cracks. Tyler leaned slightly toward Derek. Harrow? As in? Yeah, Derek said quietly. Harrow. You know him? Ricky asked. He's a legend, Tyler said. 28 years of active service. 3 command tours. 2 of them were... He stopped, seemed to reconsider the sentence. He's not the kind of colonel you see at a boot camp. He operates at a completely different level. What's he doing here? Kowalski, as if answering a question he wasn't supposed to hear from 15 feet away, said without looking up from his clipboard, Fallout! Marcus stood at attention until the formation broke. He had not said anything when Kowalski announced the name, had not moved, had not reacted. But Ricky, standing one step to his right, felt something, a subtle change, the way you feel a temperature drop before you see your breath. He glanced at Marcus, saw nothing on the surface, and filed the nothing away. Day 28 ran hard, both physically and tactically, as if Kowalski was drilling them with a particular urgency, pushing for refinement at the margins of technique and decision-making in a way that suggested the inspection wasn't just a formality. The recruits pushed back hard in return. Even Tyler, in the quiet reconfiguration happening inside him since the previous evening, moved through the training block with a focus that Kowalski noticed and did not comment on. Because Kowalski did not comment on positive developments any more than he did negative ones. He simply noted them. In the evening, Marcus took his usual spot on the concrete step. Ricky came out after him, sat down. Harrow, Ricky said. Marcus said. You didn't react? No. Why? Marcus watched the parking lot. His minivan sat quiet and patient, the way a thing with no pretension sits, just occupying its space without comment. He thought about the crayon drawings on the dashboard. He thought about the drive up from Memphis at 4 a.m. He thought about a room he wasn't supposed to describe to anyone, and a tattoo he'd had put on his back at 24 years old. And the man who had told him, what you carry doesn't stop being what it is. Some roads cross again, Marcus said quietly. That's all. Ricky looked at him sideways. You know him, Harrow. Marcus was quiet for a moment. He knew me, he said. The difference between those two things hung in the air between them, without explanation. Ricky thought about asking more, decided, correctly, that Marcus would say what Marcus was ready to say, and that pressing would only close a door that was currently, very slightly, very carefully, open. "Whatever it is," Ricky said finally.
"You all right with it?" Marcus looked up at the overcast sky, the way he'd been looking at it for days. The clouds were shifting. Somewhere behind them, stars that he couldn't see were doing exactly what they always did. "I'm all right," he said. He touched the breast pocket. Drew and letter, both there. Day 29. Day 30 was coming, and Marcus Cole, who had driven 11 hours in a minivan with a broken car seat and a child's drawing and a thermos of black coffee, who had absorbed 3 weeks of mockery without cracking, who had outrun and outlifted and outthought men half his age without saying a word about why, sat on his concrete step in the dark and breathed the way he had taught himself to breathe in a hospital room when the world was ending, quietly, slow, long, controlled. On his back, beneath his plain cotton t-shirt, a coiled viper and a shattered skull waited in the dark. 15 years of silence. And 2 days from now, a door was going to open. Day 29 passed the way the day before. Something important always passes. Too slowly and too fast at the same time. Every hour carrying a weight it didn't normally carry. Marcus moved through it like he moved through everything. Steady, present, doing the work in front of him without letting what was coming crowd out what was happening now. But there was a quality to his stillness that day that was different from his usual stillness. The difference between a man who is calm because nothing is pressing on him, and a man who is calm because something large is pressing on him, and he has chosen, deliberately and at some cost, not to let it show. Ricky felt it. He didn't say anything. He just stayed close without making a thing of it, the way a good friend does when he understands that presence is what's needed, and questions are not. Okonkwo noticed it too. During the evening submission work on the spare mat, their regular routine now, efficient and quiet, Okonkwo moved through the techniques with his usual focused patience, and at the end, when they were done and toweling off, he looked at Marcus and said simply, "Tomorrow." "Tomorrow," Marcus confirmed. "Whatever it is," Okonkwo said, "you're ready for it." Marcus looked at him. "You don't know what it is." "No," Okonkwo said, "but I know you." He picked up his gear and walked back toward the barracks with the unhurried dignity of a man who says exactly what he means and not one word beyond it. Marcus stood on the mat alone for a moment, then he followed. He called Lily at 7. She had received his letter, the one he'd written on day 16, telling her about the obstacle course and the stars and the way Virginia smelled different from Memphis in the early morning. She had read it 3 times, Mrs. Caldwell reported, and had written back a letter of her own that was mostly drawings of the winged horse and what appeared to be Marcus in a superhero cape, which Marcus chose to interpret as a compliment. "Did you get my drawing?" Lily asked. "Not yet. The mail takes a few days. But Mrs. Caldwell described it." "I gave you a cape." "I heard." "Red, because red is the best color." "I thought purple was your best color." "Red is the best color for capes, Daddy. Purple is the best color for everything else." "That's very specific." "I've thought about it a lot." He laughed again, that same involuntary full laugh she produced in him every time, the one that Fort Dawson had no access to. "I'm sure you have." "Daddy," her voice shifted, that pre-question pause he knew so well. "Is something happening tomorrow?" He was quiet for a half-second. "Why do you ask?" "You sound like you do before something important. Like before my first day of school. Or before—" She stopped.
Before Mama went to the hospital the last time.
He closed his eyes briefly. Something's happening, he said honestly. But it's okay. It's not bad. It's just something I need to face. Are you scared? He thought about that. Really thought about it. The way he tried to honor her questions by taking them seriously. A little, he said. But the good kind of scared. Like before something true. She considered this. Okay, she said finally. In the same way she always said okay. Like she had processed it completely and filed it under acceptable. I love you, Daddy. I love you, Lilybird. He slept. Not easily, but fully. The deep, intentional sleep of a man who knows that being rested is a form of preparation. At 0600 the next morning, Fort Dawson was already running at a different frequency. It wasn't anything dramatic. No visible ceremony, no extraordinary preparation. But there was a precision to the morning. The way the staff moved, the way Kowalski ran formation with an extra degree of exactness that communicated something the recruits read immediately. This was not a normal day. Colonel Harrow arrived at 0830. Marcus heard him before he saw him. Not the man himself, but the change in the room that preceded him. The way a room reconfigures when someone with a particular kind of authority walks toward it. Conversations shortened. Postures adjusted. Even Kowalski, who was not a man who adjusted his posture for anyone, stood slightly differently. Then the door to the training hall opened. Colonel James Harrow was 61 years old, and he wore those years the way a good piece of leather wears its age. Not diminished by it, but marked by it in ways that told a true story. He was lean, gray at the temples, with eyes that moved across a room the way a surveyor's instrument moves. Systematic, precise, missing nothing. His uniform was immaculate. His bearing was the kind that isn't performed, because it stopped being a performance about 30 years ago, and became simply the shape the man was. He walked into the training hall with 2 aides behind him, and Kowalski meeting him at the entrance. And he swept the room once with those surveyor's eyes. A single pass, thorough, efficient, and began the inspection. Marcus was in his assigned position with the rest of the unit, at attention, facing forward. He did not look at Harrow directly as the colonel moved down the line. He looked straight ahead, the way he'd been trained to stand at attention, the way his body remembered without being asked. Harrow moved down the row, stopped briefly at Ricky, at Okonkwo, at Tyler. Standard inspection points, posture, gear, bearing. Kowalski walked a step behind, clipboard in hand, making quiet notes. Harrow reached Marcus. He stopped. There was a pause, measured, perhaps 2 full seconds, that was different from the pauses at the other recruits. A pause with something in it. Cole, Harrow said, reading the tag. Yes, sir, Marcus said, eyes front. Another pause, shorter. At ease, Cole. Marcus moved to at ease, looked forward. Harrow was looking at him in a way that was no longer about the inspection. It was something else, something more specific, more personal, filtered through something that lived in the colonel's history and not in the protocol of the moment. How long have you been in the program? Harrow asked. 30 days, sir. Sergeant Kowalski, not looking away from Marcus. Sir. Kowalski stepped forward. Cole's performance assessment. Kowalski consulted the clipboard, with no visible feeling about being put on the spot. Top 3 in physical assessments across all categories, sir. First in tactical decision-making scenarios, team problem-solving, and peer leadership metrics. 0 disciplinary notations. Harrow received this without any visible reaction. He was still looking at Marcus with that particular quality of attention. How old are you, Cole? 38, sir. And your prior service? Army, 12 years. What unit? The room, which had been very quiet, got slightly quieter. Marcus looked straight ahead. I'm not at liberty to say, sir. A beat. Is that right? Harrow said. It wasn't a question. It was the sound of a man processing a response that confirmed something he'd already suspected. Yes, sir. Harrow was quiet for a moment. Then, continue the inspection, Sergeant. Kowalski moved on. Harrow did not move on immediately. He stood 1 second longer than he should have, looking at Marcus with something in his expression that wasn't quite recognition and wasn't quite memory. Something that sat between the two, in the territory where old knowledge and present reality are still working out their relationship to each other. Then he moved on. The training demonstration ran for 90 minutes. Tactical scenarios, physical assessments, team exercises, the full display of what 30 days at Fort Dawson had produced in these recruits. Harrow watched from the side, arms crossed, occasionally asking Kowalski a quiet question, his face giving nothing away. Marcus performed the way Marcus performed, efficiently, without display, doing exactly what was required and not using the audience as a reason to do anything different. The fog exercise went cleanly. The team navigation problem, his squad running it again for the colonel's evaluation, came in first. 8 correct decisions, clean completion. During the submission techniques demonstration, Kowalski paired the recruits for live display, and when Marcus worked with Okonkwo, the two of them having spent 20 minutes a day for 2 weeks building something real and functional together, there was a quality to it that was visibly different from the other pairs. Not because either man was trying to perform, because the technique was real, and the rapport was real. And the difference between those things and imitation is not subtle to someone who knows what they're looking at. Harrow knew what he was looking at. He stepped forward slightly from his position at the edge. The exercise concluded. Kowalski began moving the recruits into the next block. "One moment," Harrow said. Kowalski stopped. Harrow crossed the mat toward Marcus. The room, every recruit in it, did not move. "Take off your shirt, Cole," Harrow said. It was so specific and said so directly that it produced a half-second of collective stillness from everyone in the room. Not because it was inappropriate. There was nothing inappropriate about it in a physical training context, but because of the precision of the request, the certainty behind it, the sense that Harrow was not asking a general question, but confirming a specific answer he already knew. Marcus looked at him for one beat. Then he reached down, grabbed the hem of his training shirt, and pulled it over his head. He turned around. On his back, across the right shoulder blade, black ink on skin that had lived 38 years of a hard and deliberate life, was the tattoo. A coiled viper, thick, patient, the scales rendered in precise detail by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Its head was raised, not striking, ready, waiting, containing itself. And beneath it, a skull. Not cartoonish, not decorative, but rendered with the same precision as the snake. Split clean down the center, 2 halves slightly separated, as if something had passed through it that could not be called back. There was no text, no unit name, no numbers, nothing that would mean anything to anyone who didn't already know what it meant. Harrow looked at it for a long moment. The color left his face. Not dramatically, not a movie pallor, not a stagey reaction. Just the quiet, involuntary evacuation of blood from a face that was doing its level best to maintain its composure, while something deeply lodged in its owner's history was suddenly, without warning, present in the room. Harrow's jaw moved once. His eyes stayed on the tattoo. The 2 aides behind him exchanged a glance. Kowalski had gone very still. Tyler Brance, standing 8 feet away,
was watching with the focused attention of a man who had been waiting without knowing it for the explanation of a 30-day question, and was now watching the answer arrive, and still didn't fully understand what he was seeing. Harrow took one slow breath. Then, with a precision that matched the tattoo itself, deliberate, exact, no wasted motion, he brought his right hand up and saluted Marcus Cole. Not a casual salute, not a courtesy salute. The kind of salute that carries specific weight,
The kind that means something technical and real, and is not offered lightly by a man with 28 years of command behind him. The room stopped breathing. Marcus turned around, looked at Harrow for a moment, meeting those surveyor's eyes, which were no longer surveying, but simply looking. The way a man looks at something he thought was gone, and turns out to still exist in the world. Then Marcus returned the salute. The two aides had not moved. Kowalski had not moved. "At ease," Harrow said quietly, more to himself than to anyone. He lowered his hand, looked at Marcus. "Ghost Viper," he said, barely above a murmur, like saying it out loud was something he was still deciding whether was appropriate. "Yes, sir," Marcus said. Harrow exhaled, one long, slow breath, and for just a moment, behind the rank and the uniform and the 28 years, something human moved across his face. Something that looked like relief or grief, or the complicated feeling that arrives when history you thought was fully behind you turns out to be still moving. "How long have you been out?" Harrow asked.
8 years, sir.
"And you came back?"
Yes, sir.
"Why?" Marcus held his gaze.
My daughter needs to see the right thing, sir."
Harrow looked at him for a long moment. Then he nodded, a small nod, the kind that means, understood completely, and I don't need more than that. He turned to the room, every recruit standing perfectly still, some of them barely breathing. "Sergeant Kowalski," Harrow said, his command voice back in place, smooth and final. "Sir, take a 15-minute break." "Yes, sir." Kowalski looked at the recruits. "Fall out, water break, back here in 15. The recruits began moving, slowly at first, with a particular reluctance of people leaving a room where something important is still happening. Tyler moved, but kept looking back over his shoulder, until Derek pulled his sleeve. Ricky was the last to leave. He looked at Marcus once, a direct, private look that said, "I don't know what just happened, but I am completely on your side," and then walked out. The hall emptied. Harrow, his two aides, Kowalski, and Marcus Cole, shirt still in his hand. "You can put that back on," Harrow said. A slightly tired version of himself now, not diminished, just more human. Marcus pulled his shirt on. Harrow turned to his aides. "Step outside." They stepped outside without a word. Kowalski looked at Harrow. "You too, Sergeant, if you don't mind." Kowalski looked at Marcus, then at Harrow. Then, in the only indication he had ever given that anything surprised him, he blinked once, very deliberately, and walked to the door and closed it behind him. Marcus and Harrow stood in the empty training hall. Harrow looked at him for a long moment without speaking. Outside, distant, the sounds of the base. In here, just two men and 30 years of something between them that had never been simple. "You were the best operator I ever put in the field," Harrow said, quietly, factually, like he was reporting a statistic. "I want you to know I never forgot that." "I know, sir." "When you got out," Harrow paused, "I understood why. When I heard about your wife, I understood." Another pause. "I should have reached out." "You didn't have to." "No, but I should have." Harrow looked at the wall for a moment. "Ghost Viper was deactivated 4 years after you left. The unit,
It was a complicated end, some political, some operational. The men scattered. Most of them I've lost track of. He looked back at Marcus. I think about it sometimes, whether we asked the right things of the right people. You asked necessary things, Marcus said. The two aren't always the same. No, Marcus agreed. They're not. Harrow crossed his arms, looked at Marcus with a new configuration of his expression. Not the colonel evaluating a recruit, but something more direct than that. What do you need out of this program, Cole? Why are you really here? What I told you, Marcus said. My daughter. But specifically, what does this give you that you couldn't get another way? Marcus was quiet for a moment. He thought about the concrete step and the overcast sky. He thought about Lily asking if he was the good kind of tired. He thought about what Okonkwo had said. The compass just points north. It doesn't have to explain itself. She's 7 years old, Marcus said. She lost her mother. She wakes up at 3 in the morning afraid that she's going to lose me too. And someday she's going to be old enough to ask me who I was. Not just that I was in the army, not just that I kept her safe, but who I actually was, what I actually did, what I was made of. He paused.
I need to be able to look her in the eye and tell her that when I was 38 years old and the world had taken things from me, I got up. I drove to Virginia. I showed up, and I didn't quit. He paused again. That's what this gives me, that I couldn't get another way. Harrow was quiet for a long moment. The unit you were in, he said finally. The things you did. She'll never be able to know most of it. She doesn't need to know the things I did, Marcus said. She needs to know what kind of man does them. Something moved in Harrow's face. Settled. I want to offer you something, Harrow said. Not because of the tattoo. Because of what I watched this morning and what Kowalski's been telling me in his assessments. Yes, he's been filing them. He files assessments on everyone. He just doesn't mention it. And because of what you just said. Marcus waited. Finish the program, Harrow said. You're 2 days from completion anyway. But after that, I have a standing need for a senior training advisor for the next cohort at this facility. Civilians with the right background, the right experience. The work wouldn't be classified. It would be exactly what it looks like. Mentorship, instruction, training design. It would let you be home most of the time. With your daughter. Marcus held very still. I'm not asking you to go back to what you were, Harrow said. I'm asking you to be what you are now. Because what you are now, he nodded slightly toward the door, toward the dispersed recruits outside. What you've done to that unit in 30 days without trying to, that has value, real value. The training hall was quiet. Marcus looked at the floor for a moment, thought about Memphis, about the minivan, about Mrs. Caldwell's careful cursive and Lily's winged horse and dinosaur pasta and bath time and a phone call at 7, about what it meant to come home the same man you left as. Let me finish the 2 days, Marcus said. Harrow nodded. Take your 2 days, and then I'll give you my answer. That's all I'm asking. Harrow extended his hand. Marcus shook it. Harrow held it for a second, firm, direct, the handshake of a man making something real, and then let go, and picked up the command bearing like a coat he'd set down briefly, and became Colonel Harrow again. Send Kowalski back in, he said. We've still got a training block to evaluate. Marcus went to the door, opened it. Kowalski was standing exactly where he'd been asked to stand, 2 feet from the doorway, studying the middle distance with professional intensity. Sergeant, Marcus said. Kowalski looked at him. He wants you back. Kowalski moved past him into the hall without a word, then stopped and without turning around said, Cole? Yeah. Good work today.
It was said in exactly the same tone Kowalski used to report weather conditions or caloric requirements. Completely flat.
Completely without decoration. Marcus understood that for Sergeant Kowalski, it was practically a standing ovation. "Thank you, Sergeant," he said. When the recruits came back in, they came back differently than they'd left. The 15 minutes had done what 15 minutes of charged silence among young people always does. Produce theories, questions, half-conversations that stopped before they were finished. Tyler had been unusually quiet, Ricky told Marcus later. He'd sat on a bench outside, elbows on knees, and just stared at the ground like he was trying to do math that kept not adding up. The training block resumed. Harrow observed the rest of it from his position at the edge without incident. When it concluded, he and Kowalski conferred briefly, and then Harrow addressed the group directly. A short, clear assessment of what he'd observed. Commendations where they were earned. Corrections where they were needed. Professional. Specific. Impersonal. He did not single Marcus out. He did not have to. When Harrow left, his aides behind him, the door closing with the solid finality of someone who has completed what they came to do, the training hall held the particular stillness of a room still processing something it hadn't finished understanding. Then Tyler said, from across the room, to Marcus directly, "Ghost Viper." Not a question, just the name, said aloud, like he was testing its weight. Marcus looked at him. "I looked it up once," Tyler said, "during a research project in my last year of college. Military history. There were about 3 sentences in a declassified summary, and most of them were redacted." "That sounds right," Marcus said. Tyler shook his head slowly. "You drove up here in a minivan," he said. It wasn't mockery. It was something else entirely, a kind of stunned accounting. "I have a daughter," Marcus said. "Minivans are practical." Ricky Torres put both hands on top of his head and started laughing. A real laugh, deep and loud and helpless. The kind that breaks open in a person when tension and absurdity and emotional honesty all arrive at the same time and there's nothing else to do. It moved through the room like weather. Even Okonkwo smiled, wide and genuine, his deep voice adding to the laughter with the unhurried warmth of a man who rarely laughs but means it completely when he does. Even Derek laughed, surprised by himself. And Tyler Brance, who had spent 30 days trying to make Marcus Cole feel small, who had pushed and prodded and gone too far and then come back from too far, looked at Marcus across the laughing room with an expression that was finally, completely, without anything else in it, just respect. Simple, undefended, real. Marcus picked up his water bottle. 2 more days, he said. He was not talking about the program. The last 2 days at Fort Dawson had a different quality to them. Not easier. Kowalski didn't believe in easier, and he wasn't about to start now just because a colonel had visited and saluted a recruit. If anything, the final training blocks were sharper, more demanding, as if Kowalski understood that the last thing a man does is what he remembers longest, and he intended for these men to remember something worth carrying. But the quality of the group had changed. Something had shifted in the room when Harrow saluted Marcus, and didn't shift back when Harrow left. It had settled into the unit like a new understanding of the floor. Same floor, same weight bearing down on it. But now everyone knew what it was built on. Tyler moved through those final 2 days with a focus that was quieter and more genuine than anything he'd shown in the first 4 weeks. Less performance, less noise. He worked hard and didn't announce it, which for Tyler Brance was the closest thing to transformation that 32 days could reasonably produce. It was a beginning, not a completion. But it was real. Derek had pulled back from his orbit of Tyler in small but visible ways, taking his own line through exercises instead of following Tyler's, making his own calls on the decision problems without waiting to see what Tyler did first. Small things. But the small things are usually where the real changes live. Ricky Torres posted the second best time on the final obstacle course run. He told Marcus about it with the particular pride of a man who has worked genuinely hard for something and knows the difference between that and luck. Marcus told him it was deserved. Ricky said he knew, and the knowing mattered. Okonkwo said nothing to anyone about the final assessments. He simply performed them. Thorough, powerful, exact. And then went back to writing his long, careful letters home. And if he felt proud of what he'd done, he kept it in the same interior place he kept everything else that was important to him. Marcus ran the final obstacle course clean and fast. Not his absolute best. He'd had better mornings physically. But controlled and complete, every station executed with the same unhurried efficiency that had been driving Tyler quietly insane since day one. He crossed the finish line and stood still for a moment, breathing, looking at nothing in particular. Kowalski marked his time on the clipboard without comment. Then, without looking up, "Good run, Cole." It was the second time in 2 days that Kowalski had said those words to him. Marcus understood this was statistically extraordinary. "Thank you, Sergeant," he said. On the final evening, the night before graduation and program completion, there was a loose, unofficial gathering in the common area of the barracks. Not authorized exactly, not prohibited exactly, the kind of thing that exists in the gray space of institutional tolerance. Someone had produced a case of sodas from somewhere. There was low conversation and the specific relaxed energy of men who have done something hard together and are now on the other side of it, looking back. Marcus sat on the edge of a table, soda in hand, and for once, he didn't feel like the peripheral figure he'd been in the first week. He was simply present, part of the room. The way you're part of something when you've paid the full price of admission. Tyler came and stood near him. Not dramatically. Just came and stood there, which for Tyler was its own kind of statement. For a while, neither of them said anything. The room moved around them. Then Tyler said, "I looked up everything that's publicly available on Ghost Viper. Took me about 40 minutes. There's almost nothing." "I know," Marcus said. 3 sentences and a declassified summary. 2 of them are about unit deactivation. One of them is about operational scope, and it's got 5 words redacted right in the middle. "Those were important words," Marcus said. Tyler looked at him sideways. "Were you ever going to tell anyone? If Harrow hadn't come?" Marcus thought about this honestly. "No." "Why not?" "Because it doesn't matter what I was," Marcus said. "It only matters what I do." Tyler was quiet for a moment. "It matters to us," he said. "To me. Now." He paused. "I spent 30 days trying to make you feel like you didn't belong here. And the whole time," he shook his head, "you belonged here more than any of us." "That's not how belonging works," Marcus said. Tyler looked at him. "Belonging isn't about credentials," Marcus said. "I didn't belong here because of Ghost Viper. I belonged here because I showed up and did the work. Same as you. Same as Ricky and Okonkwo and Walsh and everyone else." He paused. "The tattoo on my back, that's the past. What I did in this training program, that's now. The past can inform what you are. It doesn't get to be what you are." Tyler was quiet for a long time, long enough that the conversation around them shifted twice, and the soda in his hand went warm. "I want to ask you something," Tyler said finally. "And I want you to answer it straight. Okay? When I went after you, the stuff about your wife, about Lily." He stopped. His jaw tightened. "Did you want to hurt me? Marcus looked at him directly. Took a moment before he answered, because the question deserved a real answer and not the easy one. For about 2 seconds, Marcus said. Yeah. Tyler nodded slowly, like the honesty was something he'd needed. What stopped you? He asked. Lily, Marcus said simply. What I'm building for her to see. You can't build the right thing with the wrong materials. Tyler stared at the floor for a moment. Then he looked up. She's lucky, he said. Your kid. Marcus looked at him. She's everything, he said. Not sentimentally, just factually. The way you state something that is the organizing principle of your entire existence. Tyler nodded. He put out his hand. Marcus looked at it for a half-second. Then he shook it, firm, direct, complete. The handshake of two men who had moved through something real together and were now standing on the other side of it with full knowledge of what it cost. You're going to be good at whatever comes next, Marcus told him. If I keep my mouth shut more than I open it, Tyler said. That'd be a start, Marcus agreed. Tyler laughed, a real one, undefended. The first laugh he'd produced in Marcus's direction in 32 days that had nothing mean in it. He walked back toward the group, and something in the way he moved was slightly different from the way he'd moved on day one. Slightly less volume to it, slightly more interior. Ricky appeared at Marcus's side almost immediately, with the timing of a man who had been waiting for that conversation to end. Well, Ricky said. Well, Marcus said. You know he's going to tell this story for the rest of his life, Ricky said. The guy from Ghost Viper who showed up in a minivan. Let him tell it, Marcus said. It's a good story, Ricky said. He paused. What are you going to do? After. Marcus looked at the room, at Okonkwo writing in his corner, at Walsh playing cards with Bennett and Arias, at Tyler talking to Derek in a way that had less performance in it than it used to, at this collection of people who had been strangers 32 days ago, and were now something that didn't have a clean civilian name, but that every person who had ever served understood immediately. I got an offer, Marcus said. From Harrow. Marcus looked at him. Ricky shrugged. I'm not an idiot. Training advisor, Marcus said. For the next cohort. Based here mostly. Home most of the time. Home with Lily. Home with Lily. Ricky nodded slowly. You going to take it? Marcus was quiet for a moment. He touched the breast pocket, drawing and letter, both there, both real, and thought about a phone call at 7, and dinosaur pasta, and a winged horse drawn in crayon, and what it meant to look your child in the eye and be the right shape of a man. Yeah, he said, I'm going to take it. Ricky exhaled, a breath that had been waiting. Good, he said. That's good, Marcus. The use of his first name, just his first name, simple and direct, landed quietly and stayed. Graduation morning was bright. The weather had finally made up its mind, and what it had decided was clear and cold and blue. The kind of Virginia morning that feels like an apology for everything the sky had been doing for the past 2 weeks. The sun came in hard and honest and put sharp shadows on everything. The ceremony was straightforward. Kowalski was not a man for extended pageantry, but it had the weight that all completions carry. Certificates, a brief address. Each recruit called forward in turn. When Marcus Cole was called, there was a sound from the assembled recruits. Not an outburst, not a disruption, just a collective, involuntary increase in presence. An alignment of attention. The kind that happens when a group of people have decided, without discussion or agreement, that they are witnessing something that matters. Marcus walked forward. Kowalski handed him the certificate. Held his hand for 1 second longer than necessary.
Cole, he said quietly. Just his name. Sergeant, Marcus said. Kowalski released his hand. Marcus turned and walked back to his place in the line. And that was it. Clean. Complete. No performance. No theater. Just a man finishing what he started. After the ceremony, in the parking lot, there was the usual organized dispersal. Gear being loaded, vehicles pulling out, the particular bittersweet activity of a place being left behind. Marcus packed the minivan methodically. Duffel in the back, certificate in the glove compartment, next to his registration, and a folded gas station map from Memphis that he'd never thrown away. He checked the oil because the engine had been making that negotiating with God sound again. It was fine. Of course it was fine. He was closing the rear hatch when he heard footsteps and turned. All of them. Ricky first, hands in pockets, grinning in that uncomplicated way of his. Then Okonkwo, large and still and warm. Walsh and Bennett side by side. Arias with her arms crossed and her chin up. And Tyler and Derek, slightly back from the group, but present. Clearly, unambiguously present. Nobody said anything for a moment. Then Ricky said, "You're not going to do some big speech, are you?" "No," Marcus said. "Good, because I hate big speeches." "I know," Marcus said. "You've mentioned it." "Just—" Ricky stopped, looked at Marcus directly. "Thank you, for being what you were in there. For all of it." "You did the work," Marcus said.
Every one of you. We did it better because you were there, Okonkwo said, quietly. Finally. Marcus looked at him. Compass points north, he said. Okonkwo smiled, the wide, real one. Tyler stepped forward from the back of the group. He had his hands at his sides and his jaw set, and his eyes were doing something they hadn't done in 32 days of Fort Dawson. They were uncertain. Not weak, just honest. "I know I said sorry already," Tyler said. "I just want to say it again. Sober. In the daylight." "Tyler," Marcus started. "I want to say it right," Tyler said. "What I did, the things I said about your wife, about your daughter." He paused. "I didn't know what I was doing. That's not an excuse. I was careless with things that weren't mine to be careless with. And I'm sorry for it. Genuinely." Marcus looked at him for a long moment. "You know what I see right now?" Marcus said. Tyler waited. "I see a man who figured something out," Marcus said. The hard way, which is the only way most people actually learn it. That counts for something. It counts for a lot. Tyler's jaw moved once. He nodded. Marcus put out his hand. Tyler shook it, held it, let go. "Be good," Marcus said to him. "Not just good at things. Good." "I'll work on it," Tyler said. "I know you will." Marcus said his goodbyes, short, specific, real. He shook Okonkwo's hand, and it became briefly a two-handed hold. Okonkwo's large, quiet hands around his, and no words were needed. He told Ricky to call him, and meant it, and Ricky said he would, and meant it. He told Walsh and Bennett and Arias that they were ready for whatever came next, and he said it the way he said things, without filler, without hedging, so they knew he meant it as a fact and not a nicety. Then he got in the minivan. He sat for a moment before starting it. Just sat. The way he had sat in this same parking lot 32 days ago, looking at Fort Dawson, at the MPs at the gate, at the recruits in the distance. Now he looked in the rear-view mirror, the group still standing there, watching. Ricky raised a hand. Okonkwo nodded once. Tyler, last in the mirror, edges softened, lifted his chin. Marcus started the engine. It turned over on the first try.
didn't negotiate with anyone. He looked at the crayon drawings on the dashboard. 2 stick figures, yellow sun. They had traveled 11 hours up from Memphis with him, and now they were going to travel 11 hours back. He touched one corner of the nearest drawing, Lily's careful, deliberate lines, pressed hard into the paper so the words would last. He put the van in reverse. He drove out of Fort Dawson the same way he'd driven in, without ceremony, without announcement, without needing the moment to be anything other than exactly what it was. The Virginia road opened up ahead of him.
Blue sky, cold light, 11 hours to Memphis. At the first stoplight past the base gate, he reached into his breast pocket and took out the drawing. 2 stick figures, yellow sun, Daddy come home safe, and held it for a moment in his right hand. Then he put it back, both hands on the wheel. He had a phone call to make at 7. He had dinosaur pasta to eat, and a winged horse drawing to hang on the refrigerator, and a 7-year-old's bath time and bedtime story to be present for. He had an answer to give Colonel Harrow, and a new cohort of recruits to eventually stand in front of and give exactly what had been given to him. Not the classified history, not the tattoo, not the ghost of what he used to be, but the only thing that had ever actually mattered. The proof. The living, daily, unglamorous, unbreakable proof that a man could be beaten down by life and still choose to get up. That he could lose the most important person in his world and still choose to be present for the next one. That strength was not about what you could do to other people. It never had been. But about what you could choose not to do. What you could absorb and transform and carry forward as something better than it was when it first landed on you. He drove south through Virginia with the sun coming in sideways and the engine running smooth and the drawing in his breast pocket and the certificate in the glove box. He was not the man Tyler Brance had laughed at in the parking lot on day 1. Not because he had proven something, not because a colonel had saluted him, not because a classified tattoo had changed the room. He was not that man because Marcus Cole had never been that man. He had always been exactly who he was. He had simply waited, with the patience of someone who has learned through necessity that the truth will surface on its own schedule if you give it enough time and don't get in its way. Lily had asked him if he was the good kind of tired. He was. He was the good kind of everything now, tired and clear and complete and pointed, like a compass that has been checked and rechecked and found to be true. He was going home. And he was going home the same man he had left as. That had always been the only promise that mattered. He kept it.